Salutations, salamu, tahiyaton, tayibaton, and sados to AAU Talks and AAU TV, the voice of higher education in Africa. My name is Ajiman Ochredako, and this is a privileged moment that I'm here seated with the new director for UNESCO Addis Ababa Liaison office and also representative to Ethiopia, the person of Dr. Rita Bissoonauth. Doc, welcome to AAU Talks.
Thank you so much, Ajman. Thank you very much for having me here. Such an honor. Allow me to greet all the the Association of African listeners who are here, especially Professor Olushola Oyewole, who has invited me to be here. I mean, I am very, very happy to be here with you today and to talk a little bit. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
And you understand, this is just like a very bump into your set because it's very important that we have a chat with her right towards the climax of the HAQAA 2 event currently happening here in Accra, Ghana. Live is Dr. Rita Bissoonauth. And Doc, actually looking forward to crown this HAQAA 2 event in a very harmonious way since we're harmonizing quality assurance in African higher education. Your presence is found here, and one would want to ask, UNESCO within HAQAA 2 event, what brings you here?
First of all, we are very happy to be here. We have been invited. Why are we here? That's a very important question. We are here because, first of all, UNESCO, we are a member of the advisory board of HAQAA 2.
Yeah.
We are now at the end of HAQAA 2, which is on harmonization, accreditation, and quality assurance in African higher education. As you know, UNESCO, one of the biggest mandates of UNESCO is education, and higher education is part of education. So right now, concerning one of the priorities, one of the flagship projects of the Priority Africa that we have at UNESCO 2022 to 2029, one of them is higher education. And harmonization, recognition of qualifications is part of it. So, I mean, at the time that we are starting our new operational strategy for Africa and that we are closing HAQAA 2 and going into HAQAA 3, it is important for us to be here as UNESCO to discuss on the way forward. How do we ensure that we harmonize our strategies, we synergize all our initiatives to make sure that we go into HAQAA 3 together as one group and stop working in silos. Unfortunately, we see too many organizations working in silos, and this is why it is important for us as UNESCO to be here in this HAQAA 2 at the closing of the HAQAA 2 when we are discussing what has happened, exchange good experiences, as well as challenges that have been faced, but especially at the time that we're talking on the way forward to HAQAA 3, we need to be here and discuss with all our partners who are here, the AAU, the different DAD, ENQA, the African Union Commission, of course, who is here, who is leading this process. So it is very important for us to be here today.
So let me add that all the implementing partners, AAU, OBRIO, ENQA, and DAD, are all together, all made their remarks during the program. And today, you also made your remarks representing UNESCO. And within your remarks were the OPSA, the Operational Priority Strategic Africa 2022-2029, which there's more interest to telescope into this whole concept and how does it catapult Africa to that level that we want.
Right. So allow me first of all to mention what is my role as the UNESCO office. We are known as the UNESCO Liaison Office to the African Union, to the United Nations Economic Commission of Africa, and we are representatives in Ethiopia, and we are based, of course, in the beautiful city of Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. So what is our role? Our role is to coordinate, is to synergize, is to advocate on the programs of UNESCO, and as well as to mobilize resources for the different institutions that I just meant, but especially supporting AUC and the the ECA, but mostly enhancing and positioning UNESCO, making UNESCO visible on the map. And this is why we have this Priority Africa, which has 5 flagship projects. And the first one is called Campus Africa, which is reinforcing higher education in Africa with the objectives, and related, of course, to the HAQAA 2, is to promote recognition of qualifications backed by mutually recognized quality assurance mechanisms. And this is how we link it to HAQAA 2.
Okay.
We also want to enhance the research capacity of African higher education institutions, as well as increase research outcomes with effective networking. And I just want here to highlight something that is very important, is that we need more peer-reviewed publications in the African continent, which we do not have enough. And I was mentioning in my presentation earlier that we only have about 1% of peer-reviewed publications in all the different spheres, I mean, when we consider globally. So really, there is a lot of work to be done.
Okay.
And something that I want to talk about is that at the time that we're talking about recognition of qualifications, we have different conventions. And we have the Addis Convention, as well as the UNESCO Global Convention on the Recognition of Qualifications on Higher Education.
Mm-hmm.
And we have just now reached 20 ratifications, of which makes that now this convention is going to enter into force by March 2023.
Okay.
However, we only have 3 African countries which have ratified the Global Convention on the Recognition of Qualifications.
Mm.
So this is a call to our African Union member states to ratify the Global Convention on the Recognition of Qualifications, but not only the Global Convention, but as well as the Addis Convention, which is very important also on the recognition of qualifications.
Okay.
So this was our first flagship project. Our second flagship project is known as the General History of Africa,
Mm-hmm.
which is a catalyst for achieving both Agenda 2030
Mm-hmm.
with the 17 SDGs and Agenda 2063, the Africa that we want.
Sure.
So what are we going to do is that we want to set up, that UNESCO has what we call UNESCO chairs,
Mm-hmm.
and we have about over 2,000 chairs, UNESCO chairs. We want to establish chairs, UNESCO chairs on general history of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
But also we need to support more information, more awareness on general history of Africa.
Yeah.
We have 11 volumes of the general history of Africa. So what we want to do is to make them learner-friendly, user-friendly, for our children to learn about the history in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
History in Africa, for Africa, by Africa.
Splendid.
And I think this is so important because we have seen many documents which are not necessarily written by our own countrymen. So this is, I think, very, very important to to develop more learning materials in our different member states on what is the general history of Africa. And something that I always tell my own children
Mm-hmm.
is that history informs the future.
Mm.
If we do not know about the history of our country, of our continent, how can we have a dream to achieve something? So I think this is so important. But something I think which is very important also in this flagship project, it is also raising awareness against racist
Mm-hmm.
and xenophobic prejudices
Okay.
and discriminations, especially at a time when we have radicalization and violent extremism. So it is very important for us to work on conflict prevention and management.
Mm.
So this is why it is important for us to know about our history, to talk more about those issues of building resilience in this area of conflict management.
Okay.
And in this line, UNESCO has organized what we call the Biennale of Luanda,
Mm-hmm.
which is a Pan-African Forum for the Culture of Peace, which is a joint initiative of UNESCO, of the African Union Commission, as well as the government of Angola.
Mm-hmm.
And we have organized 2 biennials up till now. The last one was last year in 2021, and the third one will be next year in November 2023.
Great.
And this initiative reinforces the goals 16 and 17 of the SDGs, as well as the African Union's Agenda of 2063, especially the one on silencing the guns initiative.
Yeah.
And we know that the Silencing the Guns initiative has now been extended until 2030.
Okay.
We know that both UNESCO and the African Union, we place culture and the culture of peace at the top of our agenda. Our motto is at UNESCO, culture of peace.
Okay.
And this is so important for us to know about our African cultural identity and our shared values. So the aim of the biennial of the culture of peace is to work towards a more sustainable individual, but also implementing the concept of what is peace, what is a culture of peace, especially working on a movement of non-violence through the creation of working with different partners, the multi-partner partners, civil society, governments, scientific community, the private sector, as well as other international organizations. So I think this is our second flagship program.
Sure.
Our third one, fostering cultural heritage and capacity building. Culture programs that we have at UNESCO is to protect and support the management of African natural and cultural heritage. And it is important for us to develop the capacities of our member states to implement the different conventions that have been ratified, so that we know, so that we can see the need to preserve the cultural heritage that we have in our countries, but also ensure the inscription of the African properties on the list. You know, we have the UNESCO World Heritage Sites.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, African countries do not have a lot of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And this is something that, and we are now going onto the list of the World Heritage Sites in danger. So our role as UNESCO is to work with AU member states on how to inscribe their World Heritage Sites, because it is a very complex process. It is not an easy process, but also to help them preserve their World Heritage Sites. So we are working on this aspect of culture, which is, of course, very, very, very important. I am right now based in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, we have 13 UNESCO World Heritage Sites with 9 tangible World Heritage Sites and 4 intangible World Heritage Sites. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we are in Ghana. I think you only have 2 tangible World Heritage Sites, if I am not mistaken, and 2 or 3 intangible World Heritage Sites. Our fourth flagship project is harnessing new and emerging technologies for sustainable development in Africa, including the recommendation of the ethics of artificial intelligence. What we want to do is to improve the capacity of African countries in the adoption and implementation of artificial intelligence, because too often AI becomes just a slogan without understanding fully what does AI mean. So there is a need to go much further deeply and conceptually on what it means to have AI in your systems, especially in your education systems. And here I am talking about developing OERs, open educational resources, so important at this time when we know that many of our schools have been closed for nearly 2 years. Many children have not had access to teaching and learning. We have all said it is time to go digital. This is fine, but I mean, we need to develop resources. We need to develop teaching and learning resources. I mean, many of our teachers in many of our countries, I mean, like they were told in 1 or 2 days, prepare your online materials. I mean, you cannot prepare online materials, teaching and learning materials like this. It doesn't happen. You have to have a training. There is, I mean, you have curriculum development for books that you read and write, but you also have you need a special training to develop teaching and learning materials online. So, I mean, this is why we also want to help in developing OERs, open education resources. So this is building the capacity of our societies in this. So this is why we think that this will foster, this will bridge the gap. This will bridge the gap that we have. This will bridge the digital gap. So we need to foster digital skills, build the competencies of teachers, of different stakeholders in this area of artificial intelligence, But at a time that we are talking of everything being digital, when we're talking of digitalization, digitization,
Sure.
and digital transformation, I think it is very important to say that we just do not take a book, make it PDF, and put it online. This is not digital learning. This is what I see when I am talking about developing curricula for online resources. It goes much beyond just taking a book,
scanning pages
and putting it online. This is not.
Okay.
They say that you need support to the learner. The material has to be interactive. It has to respond to certain criteria. How do you make it attractive? Because you know that when we have distance education, it is one of the areas where you have a lot of dropouts because you don't have a teacher in front of you. You're just in front of your screen or in front of a book. So how do you make your teaching and learning materials interesting, inclusive, attractive, and you want to continue reading? So there is a lot of training to be done in this area. So this was our fourth.
That's intriguing.
Flagship project. Our fifth flagship project is enhancing open science, reinforcing capacity building in basic and applied sciences and scientific research to strengthen innovation and technology development in the areas of ocean science, climate change resilience, and water resource management in Africa.
Okay.
And I think I want to talk a bit more about climate change. At a time when COP27 was held a couple of weeks ago in Egypt, COP15 on biodiversity has just finished 1 or 2 days ago. We know that climate change is really at the forefront of all our minds. We have all seen, and we can all see in our countries, the rise in temperatures, the floods, the droughts. We can see changing rainfall patterns. And what is happening is that this is destroying a lot of our livelihoods. And unfortunately, Africa has not been spared by the impact of climate change. I mean, we all know, I compare myself to when I was small in my country and up till now, when I remember, our summers would never go maybe up to more than 25, 26 degrees. Now during summer, we can have like 35 degrees. And in some countries, you can have summers with up to 50 degrees.
Ridiculous rates.
So imagine you cannot live in 50 degrees, you need air conditioning. Imagine the impact that this is having because you're using electricity. We are burning coal. We are not always using solar panels, unfortunately. And this is why it is so important for us to go into green technology because we're not using enough green technology at the time when we're talking of climate change. So it is very, very important for us not to forget the impact that the climate change has on food security, but also on peace and security. And this has influenced, and there has been a lot of research now is happening on the impact of climate change and on peace and conflict in the continent. And this is one of the reasons why, as the UNESCO Liaison Office, as we are developing our strategic document for 2022-2025, our biggest concern is on climate change. How do we develop resilience through education to climate change, building a culture of resilience to climate change through education? I think it is very important that we do not forget this aspect because this aspect has been highlighted by not only many heads of states, but also by the Secretary General of the UN. So we are very much focused in this area at a time when we have rise in sea levels in many countries. You know that we have countries like Maldives, who are crying out, what can we do? Because their country is such at sea level. What is going to happen to them in like maybe 10 years, 20 years time? We have no idea. It might disappear. I also come from an island, and my island might disappear in the next 50 years. Just imagine. We are many of us islanders. This is something that we keep thinking. It would be horrible for us not to have any house, any home. Anyway, we also want to develop national capabilities in science, technology, and innovation. And we need to open science. We need to open more, foster open science through increased access to scientific information and knowledge, of course, sharing knowledge and skills development in this digital age.
Right.
So these are briefly our 5 flagship projects that we have in our operational strategy for Priority Africa for UNESCO.
Great. This is an awesome pack of, a very, very strategic and transformational outlooks for the African continent. And, I wouldn't say I have a favorite among them all, but I think I love the AI idea because it has this potential to transform our ideology of digitalization and digitization. We take it to a different level with interaction and also student support, because that has been the big gap that we found in our education system, right from the very primary levels to the tertiary levels. And I believe this will be an encircling, enabling activity to change the way we educate in the African continent. And it's also a great time to also let you know that there's a quick interview that we had with Dr. Rita Bissoonauth on AAU Talks, just to understand the strategic outlook for the UNESCO and her team as well, and what they have for the African continent. And then you get it for yourself. The 5 straight goals for the continent, and you should be looking forward to a lot from her and also UNESCO. So, closing words, parting words to the African people about your agenda and how they can support from their distant ways.
I just want to say that in UNESCO we have 2 priorities. Our priority is Africa. Our priority is gender equality. So we are working to make sure that Africa is at the forefront. We should not forget that by 2040, our youth is going to be 40% of the world market. 40% of our population will be part of the job labor market.
Sure.
In 2040. And this is not far away. This is in less than 20 years' time. So it is important that we do not forget that our young girls and women are going to be at the forefront of the job labor market. We have to skill them. We have to educate them. We have to make sure that they have the capacity to take and to respond to the job labor market. And this is why I talk about, it is important to talk about, to tackle the issue of skills mismatch, to tackle the issue of technical vocation and education and training, make it more aligned with the job labor market, make it more aligned to the private sector. It is very important. Something that we need to know is that about 50% of the jobs which we have right now, which exist today, will not exist in the next 30 years. So how do we harness the demographic dividend? And this is our job as UNESCO, to make sure that we not only have access, our youth do not only access education, but we access quality education. And this comes back again to the topic of today, quality assurance in higher education, because higher education means teachers, training of teachers, training skilled employees, engineers, scientists. So this is where we are going, making sure that we respond to the job labor market and our youth can be integrated in the jobs of tomorrow.
Absolutely. And usually when we come to this show, we'll give you a knuckle. Bam. Big ups to you and what you're doing. And this is where we wrap it up beautifully on AAU Talks, the voice of higher education African. When we catch you next time, you will find me next time right here on AAU TV, the voice of higher education. My name is Ajiman Ochodapo. Keep watching AAU TV. Have a nice day. Be safe and bye.